Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Today we'll be continuing reading from third canto, chapter 8, shloka 12 onwards. The Lord lay down for 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas in his internal potency, and by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. Text 13. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Text 14. Piercing through this sum total form of the fruitive activity of the living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Vishnu, and by his supreme will it illuminated everything like the sun and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Text 15. Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as a super soul, and when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of this Vedic wisdom, whom we call the self-born, was generated. Text 16. Brahma, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the wall. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. Text 17. Lord Brahma, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus, or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. Text 18. Lord Brahma, in his ignorance, contemplated, who am I that I am situated on top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water. Text 19. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. But in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. Text 20. O Vidura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal wheel in the hand of Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity like the fear of death. Text 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. Text 22. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Aradhya Mataji, whenever you are ready, please take over, Mataji.
Thank you.
You want me to stop sharing, Mataji?
No, you can keep it on because I'm going to refer some of it here.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Yeah. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for assembling today. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today we are reading from chapter 8. Thank you, Swapna Mataji, for reading the translations. So just a bit of summary on what's happening. So the 8th chapter, it begins with Maitreya Muni answering the questions of Vidura. You may remember, let me double check really quickly. So you may remember from the last chapter, we heard the questions of Vidura, the questions that he had started to ask Maitreya Muni. And so in this chapter, he begins to answer those questions. And when he's beginning to answer the questions, he's going to be reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so this is very interesting because now um, this Srimad Bhagavatam will be spoken again. So the first time it was spoken was, if you remember, it was in the second canto, when Brahma pleases Lord Vishnu, who then reveals himself, not only reveals himself, but the spiritual um, world, and empowers him to create. And that led to this work of Brahma Samhita, which came from Brahma. And this is the Chatushloki Bhagavatam in chapter 2, in canto 2, chapter 9. Now the same thing has been spoken in the beginning of the third canto, and now again in this canto, and these questions are all relating to creation, and these answers will be also relating to creation, and more so in this particularly in this chapter, the creation will be destroyed, as well as we all know the creation means it's created, but it's also dissolved after some time, and there's two dissolutions of the creation, which we are going to hear more in detail later on. But one is the partial one, which happens after the day is finished for Brahma is a Brahma. So it's every night, which is like very, very long time for us. It's solar years, so it's called partial dissolution, which is for us, it's a long time. I think we've heard that how 1 day is equal to 4.3 million of our days. So and that much has to be multiplied to get to the night of Brahma. So when Brahma at the end of night, when he goes to sleep, that's partial dissolution. So now this takes place will be described in this chapter. It's not the final dissolution, which comes after 100 years of Brahma. So one would think, why is creation repeated again and again? The wonderful thing about Srimad Bhagavatam is that creation is repeated again and again, but we, as the perspective is different. The emphasis is totally different. Like the last time we heard the creation of the material elements and the universal forms. So this explanation is not about the creation of the material elements or the universal form of the Lord. It's not about the different creation of the different elements, material elements. But this creation begins when Lord Brahma is born, when Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters the universe. When the lotus flower erupts, practically erupts from the Lord's navel, and the totality of material ingredients, that Virat Roop, and all that is contained within the lotus flower. This is something very interesting that I learned in this chapter, is that how this lotus flower, why this lotus flower, and what is in the lotus flower. So this is the aspect that's where we discussed here, and have the lotus flower as the totality of all material ingredients, and from the Lord, and from the bud of that, there is a stem, and then there is a bud of the bud of the lotus, and that's where Brahma is born. So what we'll go. So one thing that we want to know, like we all want to know, what are the roots? We have a mother and a father, but then mother and father also have a mother and father. So right, like that. So it goes on. So we try to find out our roots. So of course we can keep going and going. Ultimately we'll have to come to Krishna. So in the same way, Brahma is in the same way, Brahma, like when he's born, he needs to know his roots, where he's coming from. All that will be discussed in this chapter. So that's just a synopsis of what we're going to do. So in text 10 to 12, so the foolish living entities are manifested from Lord's body after lying inert for millions of years. So that's how Matrimony explains that they are foolish. So in text 12, Srila Prabhupada says that because of all that collective fruitive activities of the living entities makes his body bluish because it's within him. Very interesting why Krishna appears bluish. And here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada calls these fruitive workers as mudas or foolish. So in text 13 to 15, the creating begins with the lotus erupting out of Lord's navel. You can just imagine that picture with stem and bud, and Brahma is born. So this is like very sequential, like you can pay attention on here. In text 13, I have to read the translation as well. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. So this can only take place through the mode of passion, and this is still the subtle form and not the gross form. This is a subtle form because he's lying in that form within the body of the Lord. In text 14, as Swapna Mataji read, so this, when creation begins, the lotus comes out from the navel. The lotus dries up everything. It illuminates. So that means is that it has the power of fire within it. And in this way, it dries up everything. You can imagine Garbhodakshai in pitch dark. He's lying down. Of course, he's not in pitch dark because he's got jewels on his body, and that's very shiny. So and Krishna is self-effulgent himself. However, when the lotus comes out of it, is also illuminating. It's very bright, and it dries up the water because that's how creation will happen. In text 15, into that universal lotus flower, Lord Vishnu personally entered as the super soul, and when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the self-born, was generated, which is Brahma. So in other words, when the lotus flower came out of the Lord entered, right? So remember that lotus flower, it's like the entire totality of all material creation within that lotus flower. Or you can say the Virat Roop is the lotus flower. So everything is there. So Krishna enters that because nothing can work without Krishna being there. So Prabhupada is explaining in the purport that this lotus flower is the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the lotus of the Lord in the material world. So it becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Vishnu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution, as I said before, and it becomes manifest at the time of creation. So this is due to Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who enters into each of the universes. In this form is the sum total of all fruitive activities of the living entities, conditioned by material nature. And the first of them, namely Brahma, or the controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. So so Brahma, when he goes to sleep with Narayana at the end, at the time of devastation, and when there is another creation, he's born in this way. From this description, we have the conception of the three: the gross Virat form, the subtle Hiranyagarbha, and the material creative force, which is Brahma. Mataji, text 16. Yeah, thank you. So in text 16, so Brahma is perplexed. What is his origin? What did he do? Or now this is the part when Brahma is getting very confused. So reading the translation, Brahma, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the world. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. So when he was born, apparently he didn't have the 4 heads, but it developed as soon as he started looking around, and he developed the impetus to create, but he actually couldn't create. He didn't know how to, but to do that, he had to look around, right? Because this universe is not as big as the other universes, he needed 4 heads. In text 17, Lord Brahma, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus or himself. At the end of millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and lotus in great circular waves. In text 18, Lord Brahma, in his ignorance, contemplated, who am I, and who am I that I'm situated on the top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water. So naturally, his logic was, I'm sitting here, I'm connected to the stem of the lotus, and the stem of the lotus is within the water. So obviously, I need to go down within that stem to see where my origin is. So he's going up and down to see where he's from. In text 19, Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. But in spite of entering the stem and going near to the navel of Vishnu, he could not trace out the root. So he went all the way back. Remember, this stem is covering all the 3 worlds: the lower, the middle, and the higher. Just imagine like that. How long the stem must be? It's covering all the 3 worlds. Garbhodakshai Vishnu, his body is also explained as big as the 3 worlds. So Prabhupada is saying, by dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go near to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy, one cannot reach the ultimate point. Such understanding of the Lord is possible only by devotional service, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita at 18.55. Bhaktyamam apijanati yavanyas jasmi tatvatah. So he went up to the navel. Just imagine, right to the end of the stem, which is right next to the navel. He still could not see the Lord. That's why Prabhupada is saying, you can go near the Lord, but you cannot see him. Because we can't even go near to the Lord. But Brahma was very next to the Lord, but he could not see nothing, right? In text 20, O Vidura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal wheel in the hand of Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity like the fear of death. You can imagine, he kept looking for his 100 years of his own life, which is like 311 trillion years, Prabhupada writes. And then when he started coming to the end of his life, something called fear from him came. So this is our condition. As long as we are conditioned in this material world, there will be fear of death. Brahma is experiencing just like that, fear of death. So in text 21, so it's saying that perplexed Brahma surrenders to the Lord and meditates on him. So Brahma has given up mental speculation and given up looking for Lord by his own endeavor. Now he knows that he has to surrender. And how does he surrender? Concentrating his mind on the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada writes about samadhi, which means one has to concentrate the mind upon the Lord. That is also the devotional service. As long as we have the concentration, as long as we are concentrating the mind on the Lord, not on something impersonal or vague. So Brahma gave up his personal endeavor and he concentrated on the Lord. And this is really our process too. We have to give up our own personal endeavor and surrender to the Lord. Exactly what Brahma did. And Krishna was naturally going to be pleased, right? So now he's going to meditate for another 100 years of his life. So Prabhupada writes that each and every living entity needs to engage in devotional service to the Lord if he wishes to understand the ultimate cause of his existence. So therefore, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus, thus controlling all the objectives. He concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. Last text, and then in this last text, Lord is pleased with Brahma and reveals himself. So in the translation, it says, at the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before the greatest endeavor. So now he could see because Krishna is pleased. Again, what wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada. The power of devotional service is actually the only way to see the Lord, not by personal endeavor. After he saw the Lord, he wrote the Brahma Samhita, which is recognized by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in which he sings, we all know. So actually, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that he saw Lord Shama Sundar, because Brahma Samhita is about Govinda and the spiritual world and its beauty. So you know that he sings Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Brajami. So with this, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, all assembled devotees ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for reading today. Let's offer our obeisances to all Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Thank you very much.
Very beautiful class.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
All devotees
Hare Krishna.
joining us.
Hare Krishna. Radharani Mataji, you have recorded, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.